Welcome to the Made in Maine podcast, where we dive headfirst to discuss difficult topics, core principles, and the creativity behind the thriving Made in Maine community. We invite you to tune in whether you're a skeptic, on the fence, or have many years designing and creating Maine-made products. Join us as we grow together and continue to put Maine on the map with the Made in Maine podcast. So today's Thursday, and I have Greenlight Maine. I'm a semi-finalist, so I will be going to Thomas College in Waterville, Maine, to pitch to two sets of judges. Now, this one is not going to be recorded and aired on TV, but I have to pitch twice. That's kind of nerve-wracking.
Really?
But I'm going to take a total different angle on it. This is the first time I've ever talked about this to anybody. I'm just going to wing it.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not going to rehearse it.
I think you can do it.
I think I'm in my fourth year of business. I've done enough shows and talking on the phone and looking at the numbers and knowing my direction, my goal.
Yeah.
I don't need to rehearse it so it sounds like it's scripted, because last time I was putting so much pressure on myself to memorize each section of my, not speech, but my pitch, that I jumbled it up a little bit. And it was out of order. And there was a time where I paused for an extended period of time because I was trying to remember the next part in the pitch.
Yeah.
This time I'm just going to go in and give them the rundown.
Dude, I think that's a great idea, because I think you have this real ability, this real skill of being able to talk and flow and make your ideas come together in a really cohesive way. And I think that, yeah, you're right. You've been doing this so much, and you have been pitching this business. You do it almost every day.
Yeah.
You know, pitching this business, and you know it better than anybody. I think you'd do great.
I mean, well, how's it any different? It's just a different set of people that I'm going to be talking to.
Exactly.
And so that's my plan. I have a couple points in my mind that I want to touch on that I didn't on the last round. I just didn't want to go in and repeat the same exact pitch. I wouldn't feel as driven and authentic.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah. So when you're hearing this, hopefully I would have moved on to the finales next.
So what do you win if you win the finale?
So the finale is $100,000.
Wow.
And I could only imagine the things that I could do with $100,000 for my business.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
One of the things I'd like to get is a commercial vehicle. Yeah. And I'd like to get it wrapped with box of Maine, so everywhere I'm traveling, it's like a billboard.
I know the people who can do it. Because I actually had someone today contact me about a project for a sign company. It's called Karen Signs, and they're in Bangor.
Yeah, I've heard of them. No,
they're in Herman? I think they might be in
I've heard of them.
Yeah. And so they contact me about a sign bracket or something, but I went to their website and looked through what they do, and they do all those cool vehicle wraps and stuff.
Oh, they look great.
Yeah.
But they are costly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, I'd like to hire some more employees.
Yeah.
Buying products. There's a lot of different things. Expanding. We just bought the commercial property here not that long ago, but it's not a huge property. So I'd like to, think about expanding, and the list goes on and on.
So you're thinking about actually physically expanding the building?
If I find the need for it, yeah, for sure. I want to be able to have some money set aside for that if the need presents itself.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you've done these pitches before. So were they all for Greenlight Maine, or were they for a different?
I did another one last year. It was for a smaller organization that I was a part of, Upstart Maine.
Okay, yeah.
They do a small local level one called Little Gig and Big Gig.
Yep.
And the Little Gig, I did that, and I didn't win that one. I was, again, really trying to stick to that script in my mind.
Yeah.
Nervous.
So what would you have won if you did win it?
So that one was $500. Okay. And then you would move on to Big Gig, which is the larger scale. So it's almost like a build up.
Yep.
But fortunately, they did a wild card for the first time last year, and it was a wild card on social media. And fortunately, I have a very large social media, and I have a lot of great supporters out there. And we were able to get a push behind me, and I got I won the. I don't know what it was. I'm kind of like, hey, who do you want to see come back in the wild card? And I got voted in.
Yep.
And then I came back as a wild card, and I won the show. So it was definitely a highlight for my life because I've never won anything.
The best thing that's happened in Dan's life.
It was pretty big. It was a great feeling of satisfaction. I had my wife there, my brother, couple of my friends.
Yeah.
And it really sparked my interest in Greenlight, Maine too. Like, hey, I can do this on a larger scale.
Do you know of any other pitch type things, contests like that are out there?
Yeah, there's another one. It's called Top Gun. It's a program through Upstart Maine, another program that they have where they look to accelerate your startup company, and they coach you and give you mentorship over I think it's like 3 to 6 months or something like that. And they're really coming alongside you and helping you work on your pitch and your business and growing it.
Yeah.
So that's more of like a program. And then at the end, after all of that practicing and rehearsing and coaching, they have their own pitch competition. I want to say the prize on that one was like, I want to say 25,000. It was a larger amount.
Yeah.
But that's all I know around here.
So, do you have anything else going on right now?
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I have one more thing. I think we touched on it a little bit. I don't know if I ever I hadn't mentioned anything because it wasn't final. But now I can say it is final. It is the Box of Maine Wicked Good Hot Sauce. So we have our own hot sauce now. It's a Maine original, and it has some spiciness to it. It has some real Maine maple syrup.
I can attest to it. It does have some spicy to it.
We tried it. It has a little bit of a sweetness, but then it has like a smoky heat and a heat that comes up and sneaks up on you. It's got some habanero peppers, crushed red pepper, chipotle pepper. So I would say it's a little on the hotter side. You were saying it was more along like the 9 out of 10, weren't you?
No, I wouldn't say.
I was thinking right around 7, like kind of mid. Mid-level.
It has a lasting heat too.
Yeah.
It sticks with you for a little while.
Yeah.
But it's got that smokiness, and the first thing I thought of was like a
little bit of a barbecue.
Yeah, more like a barbecue.
Yeah,
type
but like a
flavor.
spicy.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to try to find. We do product testing, and I wanted to try to find something that my customers would enjoy. And so I was, looking around, and this one here was one that I thought would be a great fit for Box of Maine. And so we have our own Wicked Good hot sauce, and it will be available in the Box of Maine very soon.
So we had some reviews left on our Facebook page, so I'm just going to read off some of these. We had one review that was really nice. It says, I love listening to this podcast. It is really interesting to see how Maine businesses are doing what needs to be done to make a successful business. The added tips they give at the beginning of the show are extremely useful. Thank you. Yeah, I find them pretty useful too, don't you?
Yeah.
I hope people are finding them useful. And then we had another review from Sue Baxter. She said, I love stuff that's made in Maine.
Me too, Sue.
Don't we
Me
all?
too.
Yeah, and she says, I try to do business at local shops. Today, I won some maple syrup. I wonder where she got some of that.
Hey.
Which is very rare of me winning something. But what a great thing to win. Real Maine maple syrup. I agree.
Yep. Congrats, Sue.
Yep. And she also says, I also love to learn more about the state I was born and raised up in. Keep up the good work, guys. Well, we'll try.
Yeah. So today on the Made in Maine podcast, we have Stephanie Mulligan from McSea Books. Stephanie is an author and publisher from Lincoln, Maine. She owns a small press publishing company, and she grew up in the beautiful western foothills of Maine in the town of Otisfield. She's a former educator and loves visiting schools and teaching students through her writing. Stephanie resides in Lincoln with her husband, 3 children, and 2 German Shepherds. Good afternoon, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us on the Made in Maine podcast. My name is Dan Finnemore, owner of Box of Maine.
And my name's Matt Foster, owner of Black Dog Ironworks.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I can't help but hear, we think we hear some of your children right now.
That's right. Skipping out on nap time.
So a lot of the stuff you do, a lot of the work you're able to do at home, right, with the publishing and everything?
Yes, absolutely. I do have help from my mother-in-law, which is great.
Yeah, that's
so,
that's always important. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I've been able to get a lot done from home, and then I do school visits and book signings, and I'm able to get help with that. So it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
So why don't we just start in the beginning? Tell us a little bit about your business. What is it that you do? You're obviously a publisher, you're an author. So just bring us back to the beginning if you could.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I started working on a poem, actually, and it was all about my summer job. I worked on a lobster tour boat for 8 years, and I just loved it so much. I wanted to remember it and capture those memories, so I wrote it all out. But I actually started, we might talk about this a little bit later, but I started writing when I was a child. I loved rhyming words, and I loved poetry. So that's really, when it started. And then I ended up hooking up with an illustrator in town here in Lincoln, and she worked on the book. Her illustrations took her 3 years, actually. So we didn't really have any time frame. It was really no pressure. So it all came together, and it's just been an awesome journey so far. So, and anyway, so that's about it on that one.
So did it take you 3 years to get the book done because of the illustrations?
So it was a lot. So basically, I'll say this. I wrote the majority of the manuscript 10 years ago, and then I put it away. I thought that maybe someday this might be a children's book. But initially I thought, I might submit this to a magazine or something like that. As I read it to my mom over the phone, and she said, that sounds pretty good. So I didn't start thinking about working on it as a children's book until I found Connie, who is my illustrator. So I started editing it more and focusing more on polishing it up. And yeah, it takes a while. If I were to have gone through a traditional publisher, they would probably give an illustrator anywhere from maybe 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months to finish illustrations, I'd say. So the second title we are working on together, How to Tap a Maple, that is going a lot quicker. So
yeah, I can imagine that the second one probably goes a little bit faster than the first one. So the book that we're talking about, I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself, but the book is titled How to Catch a Keepa.
That's right.
That's how you have to say it, though, right? In Maine.
Yeah,
right?
Actually, my original title was, the phonetic way that us Mainers would say it.
Oh, really? That's very cool.
True Mainers.
So what made you decide to go with the, standard spelling?
Well, I went back and forth, but ultimately I felt I wanted, if I ever went outside of Maine by chance, which I am in some stores outside of Maine, I thought, I'm not sure, maybe I'll just...
Yeah, be safe with it, I guess.
It was a hard choice, though.
So you a lot of it started when you were a child, rhyming and doing all of that, but then you mentioned something about the Lucky Tour. Now, I remember talking to you a little bit about the Lucky Tour. Where are they located at, and what exactly did that consist of?
So, yeah, Lucky Catch Cruises is part of Lucky Catch Lobstering, and that's in Portland, Maine. So the tours go out on Commercial Street, Long Wharf. That's the same wharf as DeMillo's. And you have your Odyssey Whale Watch down there, your Eagle Island tours, and it's right next to the Portland Lobster Company. So Captain Tom Martin is the owner, and he started commercial fishing when he was 14, and he ended up just during the summers doing these tours, and he's been doing it close to probably 30 years now. Well respected by all the fishermen in the area because he actually, is a commercial fisherman, so he has his 800 traps out the rest of the year. So you take a 90-minute tour. They do about 6 tours a day. And that's my son in the background. Hang on one second. And so you're able to haul traps, and he has all the gear. that you can put on. We teach you how to bait the bags, measure the lobsters, ban them. It's as hands-on as you want it to be. You can observe or you can partake in the fun. And then at the end, if you want, you can purchase a lobster and bring it over to the Portland Lobster Company, and they charge a little bit to cook it up for you, give you sides.
Wow, so you can really pick your own lobster, right? It's largely an educational piece for the people that are on the tour.
Absolutely. We go into the history of Casco Bay, and in Portland, it's rich with history. But there's a lot of Civil War forts we take the boat by and all of that. So.
And how did you get involved with them?
So Tom is a family member of mine, and so in high school I ended up going down in the summers after I was a rec counselor at Harrison Rec. Shout out to Oxford Hills, where I grew up.
All right.
So after that, I would drive down from Otisfield, drive to Portland, which is about an hour, and then I did that for 8 years. And so the 2 years of high school, and then all through college and after college too.
Very cool.
It was great. Yeah, it was so fun.
I can imagine.
I loved it. So you meet people from all over the world too, so that was really great.
You must have become extremely knowledgeable about lobstering and that whole industry. Yeah,
I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on it, and I've had to brush up on a couple things. But it's surprising how much comes back when I do school visits and people ask me questions. I kind of just spew the answer out, and I'm like, oh, is that right? I think that's right. But I used to make myself flashcards and everything because I just wanted to, I wanted to be able to give an authentic response and make sure my facts were straight.
Yeah, I know the exact same feeling. When I first started my blacksmithing stuff, I was actually teaching it, kind of like what you were doing. I was showing the students how to do it, and I really felt like I had to know exactly what I was talking about, and if anyone had any questions, I had to be able to answer them and not lead them astray.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
And this is pretty neat. I grew up, born and raised here, but in the book, I found it to be very, like you said, very educational. Yes, it is a children's book, and there's rhyming. The artwork is beautiful. Connie did a great job. But one of the things that I liked the most was towards the back of the book. There's a lobstering lingo, and there's a lot of terms in here that I didn't know about. So I see what you're talking about. Wanting to keep up with, just understanding what is what on the lobster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a bit to it, and the different conservation laws we have here in Maine, and when I go to school visits, I'm able to go in more depth about why we have so many lobsters here in Maine and kind of different things that play into that, like our oversized limit. Not every state has an oversized limit.
Right.
And sort of things.
What's the oversized limit?
So our measuring gauge has two sides to it. One, it measures 3¼ inches, and the other side measures 5 inches. So when you're measuring the carapace or carapace, I've heard it pronounced both ways, if the back exceeds 5 inches, then male or female, the lobster gets thrown back.
Really?
And
interesting.
One of the reasons why is because lobsters need to be like-sized to mate.
Okay.
So because we keep throwing back the breeding females, they keep getting larger, and lobster could live to be 100 years.
Yep.
And so those females the females are getting larger, they are going to need larger males to mate with.
Sure. So I can imagine when you were writing this book, you probably had a lot of obstacles that you had to overcome. So are there any that come to mind?
I would say navigating the waters of marketing, and I wasn't on social media, so I basically was starting from scratch, relearning all of that. I was on it for a time of my life, but I wasn't on it for a long time.
Yep.
So understanding how to go about getting the word out and everything, whereas I am the publisher I am representing myself.
Yep.
I don't have an agent, a literary agent or anything like that. So just a matter of, that was probably the biggest learning curve. As the other things you can sort of, I found that I was able to connect with some people that had self-published, so they were able to lead me in a pretty good direction.
That's a good thing that you mentioned there, because I think we're all, you're a small business similar to Matt and myself. Maybe you don't, you're not, I guess, crafting products in a sense, but you're still having to figure things out along the way. And how awesome is it to come alongside somebody that has done it before you, maybe establish a relationship where you can ask those questions that are just, you're not able to find the answers. So you said that you had come across some self-publishers and you're able to bounce ideas back and forth and questions and everything.
Yeah, it's been, and I feel like Maine, especially people in Maine, they're willing to just share and support each other and encourage each other. So, and that's really, I always say to myself, if I'd been living somewhere else, I don't believe that my book would have been as successful, or that I would even have been as successful, because I see that Mainers want to support Mainers all the time.
Yeah,
in a big way.
And that's really why we started the show, the Made in Maine podcast, because that's what our goal is to help support other Mainers and small businesses, and it just kind of goes back and forth. So thank you so much for coming on. So wonderful. We have the book here, but we also have an activity book on top of that. So we have in front of us right now, we have How to Catch a Keeper by Stephanie Mulligan. Great read. And then we have an activity book here. It's white and black, and it looks like you open it up and there's a lot of similar illustrations from the book, but it looks like it's prompting for coloring and the anatomy of a lobster, having you name all the different parts, which I don't think I could. I should be able to.
Good thing there's an answer key.
Yeah, you got abdomen, antennae, carapace, crushing claw, pincer claw. So a bunch of different things, and then tell your own story. So you're really looking for the children to be using their imagination, right? And kind of like how you had when you were a kid.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So I used to teach. I worked with third graders, and then right after college, and then I ended up having my own classroom, 7th and 8th grade, English language arts, and really my book. It's a picture book, but like you said, it's really for all ages. It can, when I do school visits, I can adapt my visits to any age group. So
sure.
I am available for school visits for anyone interested.
Yeah, it's. I was just thinking, I'm almost 31 years old, and I'll probably learn something from it. So.
I hope so.
Talk to us a little bit about the school visits. You've mentioned it a few times. So how does that happen? Are schools reaching out to you? Are you reaching out to them? Do you sit down and read the book to them?
So I've reached out to some schools, but I've also had schools reach out to me, which is really nice. That when that started to happen, that's really cool feeling, because you put it, as you know, you're trying to always make connections with people and that sort of thing. So I've been able to get recommendations and that sort of thing without asking. Just people are kind of spreading the word, and so I go in and. Yes, I do read my book, but more importantly, it's hands-on. It's experiential learning, because we're doing the hands-on part, and then we're able to reflect on what we are learning. And that's
so you're bringing
really
in a lobster trap. You're bringing in the tools and the banding thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so fun. I bring in these mini traps, which are easier to carry, but they look just like the lifelike. They're very lifelike. And I have obviously the imitation lobsters, and nice. I also bring in sea stars and all crabs and different creatures that you find in the trap. Then we put them in the tank for viewing on the boat. So that's what I was thinking. But and then all the gear, I bring in grundens and gloves, everything. My bait bucket, I've got fake bait that they can get their hands on, and it's really fun. And I just was at a school in Enfield, and all ages. I pre-K through 5th grade, and they were very engaged with it.
Wow.
So I think the beauty of that I was an educator, that I can rein in and I can figure out, how to adapt the lesson pretty easily. So
very cool.
It's just the kids they always have great questions and connections and.
Yeah, and it's like you've created an experience. It's more than just, hey, I got to sit down and listen to her, read a book. But I like the fact that you're hands-on, because that's kind of how I was growing up. I was a hands-on learner. So the fact that you're letting them hold those tools and seeing the lobster in the trap. And
that's their favorite part is banding. They love to put the rubber bands on the lobsters. It's so cool. I can
imagine. So so maybe we have some listeners that maybe aren't too familiar with lobstering and the lobster traps. So they put the bait in the trap, right? The lobstermen, and they're dropping it down into the ocean using their lobster boat and line. It goes to the bottom. Obviously, lobsters are bottom feeders, and they smell the bait and they go into the trap, but they can't get out of the trap, correct?
Right. So there's hoops. There's these metal hoops, and the lobsters can get in there. So there's a couple sections of the trap where the food is. We call that the kitchen, and then the next section is the parlor. And
okay, so you're really making it look nice with the lobsters, right? Here's the kitchen. Yeah. This is where you're gonna die.
Stay for a while. Yeah. So anyway, what happens is the lobsters, the younger lobsters can get out. There's escape hatches, escape vents, but one day they eventually get stuck. So I always ask the kids, how old do you think you have to be a keeper? How old do you think you have to be to finally get stuck in the trap? And so, and it's fun because they get to guess. But so the answer is about 7 years old. So once a lobster reaches around 7 years old, that would be considered a chick. So a pound to pound and a quarter. It might be a little bit, give or take, would be considered a chick. And but that's the interesting part too, is that they will be looking for these traps because they're getting a free meal, they're eating, and then they're leaving. So that's the way that's designed.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
So, so where did you get your book printed at? Is it printed in Maine or somewhere else?
Yeah, it is. It's printed right in Augusta. And so I had it printed at J.S. McCarthy. And they did a beautiful job.
Yeah, I definitely have to say so myself. It's it's a paperback, but it feels a little bit stiffer than, I don't know how to describe it.
It's a good quality.
No, it's very good.
I'm told from a lot of the bookstore owners where I'm selling my books that it competes with a hardcover. So it is a paperback, but the quality of it, etc.
Definitely. It's
which is nice to hear.
Yeah, it's even got, like the printing down the spine, which I imagine is not like extremely common for a book like that,
So how do you determine what quality book you want to put it on, whether it's a hardcover, soft cover?
Well, so for me, I had the hardcover priced out, and
so cost.
I really wanted to have it printed in Maine. It just didn't make sense to, especially this is my first book too. So as far as I wasn't sure even how many I would sell, and
sure,
I certainly didn't expect any of this actually to turn out the way it has. So, but that was, I gathered quotes. And only from a couple printers in Maine, and then I went from there. So yeah, it's really up to what your budget is, where you want it to be. If you're particular about where you want it to be printed in the U.S. and China, regionally, I really was focused on having that. I wanted the Maine-made logo. I wanted it to be representative of
Can you
Maine,
explain that for a second? Because we see that in the back of the book. It says Maine made America's best. We've seen that on a lot of our products here at Box of Maine as well.
Right. So I think it's about 70% of the product, everything that goes into the product and manufacturing and producing it needs to be around 70% needs to be done in Maine. So mine was... Okay, so mine's pretty much it would be 100%, except the paper, the actual paper, you can't get that in Maine anymore. It's not technically made. The last mill shut down. I can't remember when, but I asked about that. I said, well, where is this paper coming from?
Yep.
So
I would say that's pretty darn close. You really wanted to keep it
so
like
besides that, the actual and even the people, I'm from Maine, my illustrator's from Maine, and I had a graphic designer polish it up too.
Yeah, so that Maine made brand on the back of your book, does that come with any benefits other than just letting people know that it's like certified made in Maine?
Well, you can, if you have multiple products, then you're able to be on their website.
Okay. Yeah.
And a bit of traffic there.
Sure.
And also, they really help you a lot with the different stores and locations. There's Lisa Marie's Maine Made. There's all of these stores that are associated and are certified Maine Made stores. So they really try to only have Maine Made products in their stores. So they're great about connecting you with people too.
Yeah, and I'll just do a quick shout out because I actually think Made in Maine or Maine Made, they actually watch the podcast. I've seen them.
Really?
Yeah. So shout out Maine Made if you're listening.
Cool.
Maybe we can get a logo on the show or something.
Yeah.
We're about 50%. I'm from Maine. Matt's not. So we might not be enough percentage.
Now you tell me.
Great. Yeah.
So we've talked about your book. We have the activity book with it as well. And I think they couple each other quite nicely. Now, I had a question. How many, if you don't want to say that's fine, but how many did you have to publish or to get so that you could get published and get them printed?
So there is no, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any minimum, with J.S. McCarthy. Don't quote me on that, but
right.
I had multiple quotes for different quantities. And so I knew, okay, I wanted to get it down at a certain
right. So more
per unit.
Right.
So the more, obviously with anything, the more you have printed.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's just kind of the general rule of thumb. I'm actually working on redesigning my box of Maine, getting it made and printed in Maine. Everything 100%. Because I'm with you on that. I want to be as authentic as I can be. And so I kind of forgot where I was going with that. For volume. And that's what they said, like 250 boxes is this price, but if you do 1,000, and it's tough because it's a large upfront cost. We have some small business owners that listen to the show, and I think they're going to come across this a lot more. That you have to kind of take that gamble, but I guess it's not necessarily a gamble if you do the research. For you, it might have been because you probably had to order almost 1,000 or something, right? And 2,000. That's a lot of books.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And where you're just starting off fresh, were you concerned? What did it feel like? Was there a lot of obstacles and hurdles that you had to go through? I know you kept calling me every day trying to get the How to Catch a Keeper in the Box of Maine, right?
Hey, it wasn't every
No, I'm just kidding. But you can find How to Catch a Keeper in the Box of Maine.
So, that I think part of that, though, because I'd ordered so many, it really lit a fire under me. Because I was like, oh, my word. What have I done?
So the work had just started, right? The book was done, but now you had to get it out there.
Yeah, so it was. Yes, there was concern. But one of the places I thought for sure would be selling the most actually was not. Though basically the one place I thought, I'll sell it at this particular place. Well, it didn't really work out the way that I thought. So it's just you never know, and you just have to be willing to, be open to other ideas too.
Sure. With any business, there's going to be some of that risk involved, you're gonna have some places that things are gonna sell really well and some that aren't gonna sell so well, and you just kind of have to go with that flow,
Yep.
Yeah, it's been very eye-opening. So, but it's been great. And I'm in about 80 locations now. Nice,
real nice. That's a lot more than I think the last time we talked last year. So you are still grinding, and so are you able to say some of the places, maybe the better places that you're in? You're selling a lot
Yeah,
of?
so I'm in Box of Maine.
All right.
Of course.
Maybe not the top seller. I think we've reordered once.
So I'm in Sherman's of Maine, which is Maine's oldest bookstore, I believe. And they're all along the coast. So there's 6 locations. And that's one that does really well. My book does really well.
So let me just stop real quick. So Sherman's, one of the oldest bookstores along the coast of Maine. Now that all makes sense, but how did you make the connection? How did you get in the door there? Did you show up, call, email?
So I emailed the buyer. I found out who the buyer was, and then I sent her an email, and then I sent her my book so she could look at it. And that's basically
that's actually a good thing, right? Someone's trying to get in somewhere,
Yeah.
just send them the product. A lot of times that's what it is for me. It's like, well, let me see it first.
Yeah, absolutely. So some stores though they don't even have me send it. They already know about it,
Okay.
which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And they're like, "Oh yeah." So but a lot of times they just, I feel more comfortable, sending it. Then they know what they're getting. And
Yeah. It's almost
Sorry,
like it's almost like you were on like Bill Green's Maine or something where a bunch of people could have seen it. Huh?
I do. I usually end up sending them that, and that was really helpful.
You're probably one of his
on
last
the show.
stories that he covered, right? Or pretty close to it.
He was like, "I'm not getting off my couch a lot lately, but." He said, "Sorry, Bill, just throwing that out there." I'm honored. I was so honored that he took us on to do that. It was huge.
Did that really boost things up when you got on that show?
Yeah, it did. It just, and like he had said, it might not be immediate, but you never know where, what will happen in the future and who will see it and who it might resonate with in the future as well.
Yeah, well, I know that I saw it, and I saw this big, burly-looking, strong guy on there. I thought he said that he played for, like, the Patriots or something. Who's that guy? He looked pretty intimidating.
Buy my wife's book.
Yes. So that was your husband, right?
Yes, Matt Mulligan.
Matt Mulligan.
He's the only Mainer to catch a touchdown pass in the NFL ever.
There you go.
In history.
Wow.
Really? Wow. That's
Yes.
surprising.
And then obviously, from Tom Brady. So that's the
From Tom Brady, huh? You just kind of throw that in there.
No,
There you
period ever in history, but then also from Tom.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Anyway, yeah. So it's exciting for a lot of people.
So we can hear your kids in the background. You get to do you get to do this at home with your kids there. So walk us through maybe what a day looked like when you were working on this book with your kids around at home. I can imagine that maybe it was a little bit challenging trying to get some work done on creating the book.
Yeah, it's a balance. When you are working from home, you don't want to get too, sucked up into, you don't want that to become your life and take away from your family. So that's just been a challenge, balancing everything with that. But like I said, I do have a lot of help, and Matt's been home. He's going to try to get back into coaching, but he's been home as well. So that's been a blessing. And it was hard to kind of step away from football, but it obviously turned out okay too, because we were really able to get this book stuff off to a great start. So
yeah, and he's very supportive. I've gotten to talk to him a few times, and he seems like he's right there behind you, right there, working with you on it.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, he is. He's listened to me read my manuscript a million times.
Yeah.
Do you want to listen to it again?
So when does the creativity, does it start coming to you at nighttime, in the morning? You just want to write something down, or where do you get the inspiration? So you got another book coming out, we know that you mentioned.
Yeah, that one, I don't ever want to force anything. So actually I didn't plan on writing another book, but my mother-in-law was sending me photos about exactly a year ago. She was sending me all these photos of my father-in-law tapping maple trees with my 2 older kids. And I thought, oh my word, there it is, how to tap a maple. Because I have a boy and a girl in my first one, and they're with their dad, and he's taking them on this lobster boat, and they're learning how to lobster. And then it was just right there in front of me, and I felt so blessed by it. It was like, this makes so much sense. I literally did not know all these connections that people had to maple syrup. That kind of came after. It was like, oh, and this would be a great thing to write about, because a lot of people have a connection to maple syrup in Maine. But I didn't even think about that at first. My initial thought was, what a great way to remember these memories that my children are making with their grandfather, and it's learning, just like learning to lobster. So you're learning another a great industry. It's not as well known as lobstering, blueberries, potatoes, that sort of thing, but there are quite a few people that sell it. So.
Yeah, we actually just had Hilltop Boilers on the show recently, and it is definitely, he opened my eyes up to see, living off the land, but it's generational. It's been, I think he said he was like a second or third generation, and he's providing, he's been doing it for the guy, Mike has been doing it for 30 years. So it definitely has some history with the state of Maine for sure. And, we have Maine Maple Weekend that people go out and, sample a bunch of maple products.
Yep.
So I guess that makes sense to have a book about it and to include family in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I can see you could be very passionate about that, right? So you want it to be something that you're passionate about, that you can get behind, because you know what's going to happen, right? When that book gets printed, what's going to happen, Steph? You got to go out and you got to sell it. You got to get it to the people.
Box of Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. 10 here, 10 there.
Yeah, and is that what you find? Is it 10 here, 10 there, or do you have some customers that are getting a little bit more, ordering more than that?
Sometimes it's 3. I'm like, yeah, well, because they feel like they might be in an area where, and not 3 on consignment. You can't be. But as far as of late, people have been. Stores have been buying them outright instead of, because they want to see. They've never heard of me. They don't know how it's going to sell. So I'm not going to say, no. I'm not going to say no. I only because I can make those decisions because I'm the owner. So
definitely.
And that's the way it goes. And I feel like if it's a chance to get in the hands of a child, then I'll do consignment. That's fine. So anything to make it work.
Yeah, and where How to Catch a Keeper seems like it's doing better on like the coastal stores, the coastal towns. What do you think on the maple?
Except here in Lincoln, Maine, where I'm from. That's like, because people know, because I'm here, and so it's doing really well in Lincoln, Maine, and then like all along the coast. Sia Cafe in South Portland. That's one of my top sellers. One of the places there. And so Jeannie is the owner, and she has 2 locations. South Portland and Saco, but it's called Sia.
Very cool. So do you sell online, like Amazon or anything like that?
Yep, I'm on Amazon, and I have. Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh my word.
Dan and I are used to it. We're both dads. So.
Yeah.
I'm on Amazon, and I have a Shopify site. I found that people were more likely to order off when they're going to purchase online. They're more likely to order off Amazon, but I try to encourage people to order just right from my site. It doesn't make it much of a difference, but then they're able to see the locations, local stores that might be carrying them if they go to my site.
Sure.
So I'd rather them do that too, but sometimes there might not be one near them, so I understand that. So either way.
So talk to us a little bit about the illustrator that you have for your book. Did you know her? That her name is Connie Rand, and she's a native of Lincoln, right?
Yes.
And Did you know her prior to this, or did you have to go and try and find an illustrator for the book?
I did not know her. We actually met by chance. I had called her up. She runs a website, welcometolincolnmaine.com.
Oh yeah, I know that. Yep.
She had actually, I didn't know who ran it, and I had seen that they had posted an article about Matt when he got signed with the Buffalo Bills. So I went to the About Us page because I wanted to thank them for putting that article on there. So I saw that Connie was an artist, and I called her up to thank her, and I said, do you know any illustrators, because I have this manuscript, and anyway, that's basically it. I just was wondering if she had any friends, and she said, well, I've always wanted to do a children's book.
Well, she did an excellent job. I mean, the illustrations are very nice. They're very well done.
And amazingly, she knows how to do design. So she did, got me started with, so it's one thing to be an illustrator, but it's another thing to be a designer. So she knew how to use Adobe InDesign, which is what,
yep,
a graphic designer would use and that sort of thing. So that was a blessing too. She actually did the design for my friend Roger Stevens. He's a photographer, and he's turned his photographs into 8 children's books. And she did the design for his books. So that worked out really well.
And so she did such a good job that, correct me if I'm wrong, is she also doing the next book, How to Tap a Maple?
Yes, that's correct. And she's using, she uses acrylic paint. And then I can't remember the name of the paper that she bought this time, but it's this really awesome paper. It's made in Italy, and there's a great history to it. And I've actually mentioned it. I have this Facebook group online that I'm a part of, and I mentioned the type of paper that my illustrator was using, and I had a lot of great feedback on it.
Sure. So
it's encouraging.
So let's talk about Facebook for a little bit. So you have a Facebook page for McSea Books for this
Yep.
book.
Yep.
And do you do any other sort of social media sites?
I have an Instagram.
Okay.
And I post things with Matt in there too, my husband.
Yep.
I sort of try to, a lot of times I read about how your Facebook page should be kind of, what's the word? All of your photos want to kind of look similarly, and ours is like all over the place. So I just have said, hey, if you're into lifting weights, or if you're into Maine, or if you're into children's books, or German Shepherd,
I think it's people also like to kind of see a little bit more of, you're just you're a Mainer, and this is life, raising children. Your husband's an ex-NFL player, and you guys are in Lincoln, Maine, and you write in books, and what's wrong with that? I like that. Yep. I think people want to see that authenticity.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
I have Twitter too, but I don't really use that
I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't use it either.
Nobody understands it.
Yeah, it's a good place. If you are a writer, it is a good place to, well, you always have to be careful, but it's called the writing community. It's like #writing community. And I have connected with people, and they've given me feedback or reviews, that sort of thing. So you'll find agents on there and people that are trying to get represented. It's actually kind of like the good side of Twitter, I guess. That's what I'm told. It's not a lot of negativity.
So I just happened to see recently on social media that, did you sign some new authors to your publishing company?
Yeah, I signed my friend Suzanne Busby. She's the author of My Maine, and she actually she has a little publishing company, Little Beach Books, but she's really going to be focusing on writing middle grade level now. And what happened was she sent me her she sent me her manuscript, and she had hired an illustrator, so she sent me all of that, and she wanted some feedback a little while ago, or she was just sharing it with me, this is my book. and I fell in love with it. It's called Find a Moose with Me, a countdown adventure. So I just thought this would be a great opportunity, whereas she was looking to get out of publishing, and I'm just kind of getting into it.
Yeah, it sounds like she's right up your alley. The same type of educational thing, but also really Maine based.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. And I actually had another author reach out to me, which I might publish her in the future. She's actually been published by Simon & Schuster and 3 other traditional publishers, and she sent her manuscript to me, or multiple manuscripts. It's along the same lines, really nature-centered and all about connecting children with nature. So very exciting.
Yeah.
About that too. Yeah, this particular woman's from California, but she's written a lot of poetry about Acadia National Park and different counting books about tide pools and the forest and all that. So pretty cool.
Excellent. So we're pretty much coming to the end of the show. I have one last question for you. What are your plans for the future?
So I am working on, I don't know how far I'll get in the near future, but I did start writing one about blueberries.
Okay.
So
now we're talking.
Yeah.
How to rake the berries.
Okay. Hey, is this the first time you've mentioned this, or do other people know?
Yeah. No. Oh, I might have mentioned it like one time.
Okay.
I don't know. Not many people.
How to rake the blueberries. I like it.
Yeah. So Matt's first. Oh, I don't know if you know about the fields in is it in Greenfield? Alexander blueberries. So Matt's first summer job was raking berries there. And the only reason he had that job was so he could save money for his first real weight set.
All right.
Wow. Wow.
So what you're saying is if he didn't get that weight set, he wouldn't be in the NFL? Is that where you're going with that?
Probably, and we probably wouldn't be publishing books.
All right.
Wow.
Well, that's great. So just one more time, where can people find your book online in your social media again?
So you can find my book online on my website, which is McSeaBooks.com, or you can get to it through my author website, which is StephMulligan.com, and Amazon. It's on Amazon for as far as online, and more importantly, Box of Maine.
Oh, stop it!
Sorry. And also, I have Instagram, and that's McSea Books as well, and it's under the Mulligans.
Okay.
So I have a lot of fun things on that page as well.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, taking care of kids and whatnot.
And dogs.
Dogs and, all that. So we really appreciate you. No, it's all right. We appreciate you coming on. Dan and I, we were just talking about how, we're, we used to work at home. We kind of know what it's all about, So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye, Steph. Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Made in Maine podcast, then please consider supporting us through Patreon. Patreon is a great way for our listeners to support the podcast by donating a couple bucks to us for each episode that we put out. The podcast has not been free to produce, from the equipment that we need to record these episodes to the fees that we pay to host the podcast. It does cost us some money, and any amount of support that you can give would be greatly appreciated. Right now, there are 3 tiers that you can choose from, and some of the donor tiers come along with some benefits. So head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/madeinmainepodcast to learn more. You can also help us put Maine on the map by sharing episodes on social media sites like Facebook or Instagram, anywhere that you think someone would be interested in our content. Another way you can support us by leaving us a review on the podcast app that you are listening on, and we may even choose your review to share it on the next episode. You can find us on Made in Maine Podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/Made in Maine Podcast. You can also find each episode on the podcast platforms like Podbean, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, and now on YouTube as Made in Maine Podcast. Thank you for listening and helping us put Maine on the map.